morning, good evening, good night, wherever or whoever you may be. I'm Alan Arante, and this is the Recluse podcast. Today's guest is Camila Guzman, the queen of Compost. She completed a bachelor's degree in science and resource management at Cal State University, Channel Islands. She surfs, she travels, she gardens, and teaches yoga. She is a vital, kind, and interesting person. She was also very easy to talk to. This interview has been a long time coming, and I'm pleased to have finally made her acquaintance. In this interview, we talk about composting, the delayed gratification of gardening, the shades of language that often guide us in our lives, among other things. So, without further preamble, I am pleased to deliver a portrait of the Queen of Composting. Okay, so I am talking to Camila Guzman. You are the Queen of Compost, is that right?
That is correct. Hi, Alan.
Hi, I don't think we've ever met before. Do you live in Ventura?
I do. I live in Ventura, California.
Yeah, so do I. I live near the college. If I'm sure you know where that is, Ventura College.
Yeah, I live in Midtown, off Seaward.
Oh, okay, cool. You're near the beach.
Yeah.
Have you been going to the beach lately with all the closures and with the pandemic going on?
Honestly, I've only been maybe like less than a handful of times since the pandemic started. And yeah, it's just kind of like cringy feeling. It's just hard to say, you know?
Yeah, I've been there once since everything's been going on. And it's sort of embarrassing. I've only been here in Ventura for maybe 2 years, and I really haven't been going to the beach that much. So I already hate that. And now that the pandemic is going on, it's even less. But I went the other day, and I had that cringy feeling too. It's like, I had a mask on, separated from people, but at any moment you're just ready for someone to tap you on the shoulder.
Yeah, exactly. I know. So it's hard to relax and recreate. And I like to surf, and so it's been hard to like find spots to park and whatnot. And I feel like walking across town.
Exactly. I think because all the parking lots have been closed pretty much, right?
Yeah, and there's a few that are open, but they've been slowly like closing off more of the parking lot. So it's like not as many spots.
Yeah, it's a bummer. You got to walk like down like a whole street, park far away just to get to the beach.
Yeah.
But it makes sense. I get it.
I totally get it too.
Just trying to keep people safe.
Yeah, and there's just so many people now thinking the same thing. It's like, I just want to go surfing if I have nothing to do. Like,
I know.
Yeah.
I don't surf. I tried to surf once in Hawaii when I was on my honeymoon, and it is really hard. Like, it is really hard.
It's a lot of movement. Yeah.
I skateboard, so I thought like before I went out there, I was like, oh, like, no problem. I know they're somewhat similar. But it did not feel similar at all. Like I tried to stand up so many times, like forever. I had a really long board, so I assumed it would just like stay afloat, and it was really hard.
Wow. Yeah. Usually the board sports helps you when you finally like get the balance and stuff. You're like, oh wow, and then it's like feels like super easy, but it's a hard learning curve. It's a really hard learning curve. Yeah, because everything's moving. The water's moving. The board's moving. You're moving.
Like, I'm wondering because when I was out there, it was super flat. So I don't know if that makes it harder or easier. I assumed easier. I wasn't going to like hit waves. I didn't know what I was doing, but it was so totally flat. I had a really long board, like 12 footer or something.
Wow.
And the balance, like you feel like you're on a tightrope. It's like you move just a little to the left, a little to the right, and all of a sudden, you're tipping over.
Yeah,
that was my experience.
There's definitely like a sweet spot, and usually people, some people will stand with their toes forward, and that kind of makes it like a tightrope feeling sometimes. But if you stand like kind of facing your toes to like a side of the board a little bit, you get better. And yeah, it's just funny because I think it's a little bit easier actually to learn on days when there's a little bit of swell because there's that momentum that pushes you. And so you just get to like focus on standing and riding the wave, which is fun.
Yeah, it was a really cool actually. I went out pretty far, and I don't know why this is. Maybe it was just a spot. We were in Waikiki, and you can go out like really far, and it doesn't get deep. It like stays 5, 6, 7 feet.
Wow.
And it was really rocky, like a lot of big rocks. I just had to get out. There's like the last day we were there. And even though there wasn't any swell as far as I could tell, it took so long just to get back to shore. Like my arms were so tired, just like battling.
Battling.
Exactly. Yeah, just battling the water forever. I was like a little embarrassed. People were around, skilled people. But anyways, so just a couple icebreaker questions. Do you drink coffee when you wake up?
Not when I wake up, but I do like to drink coffee once in a while. I like small coffees, like little coffees, cafecitos. I just want little something to pick me up. But I usually like to drink water right away when I wake up.
Yeah, what, like a big glass or just a little bit?
A big old glass of water. Like, I just love it. And sometimes I'll fancy it up with like as a hot tea, especially in the wintertime. But now that it's moving into the warmer months, I like just a big glass of room temp water. I don't like the really cold water either, so I'm pretty like particular with that.
Have you ever heard the expression "early bird gets the worm"?
Yes.
Do you happen to agree with that? What are your opinions on that expression?
Actually, that's so interesting that you asked that, because I was just reflecting on that the other day, because I'm worm harvesting, and so I'm like have these sparrows that like are stalking me. Like when they see me doing it, they like hang out on the fence post and they like look at me like, are you going to feed us? Are you going to feed us? And I was like, does early bird get the worm, or does the smart worm know where to get the goods? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's changing, but ultimately I've grown up always thinking that early bird does get the worm, because you have more time to like feel good in your body, or like do whatever you need to like battle the day or tackle the day.
Right. So are you saying that in your life you don't really, wake up 5 minutes before work and then run to work? Are you more of a person that gets up an hour ahead and takes your time? How do you navigate that?
Yeah, that's definitely how I navigate. There's definitely days where I will be on the other side of the spectrum and be like, 5 minutes till work. Yes, let's do it. Especially now that there's like these Zoom meetings and stuff. It's like, I'll just hang out as long as I can until I have to. But yeah, otherwise I have a lot of energy. And so ever since I was a kid, I was like up really early. And so I just have a lot of things to think about and be excited about, I guess.
Yeah. I probably, habitually am more on the wake up 5 minutes. Just my habit, and it's terrible. I wish it wasn't that way, but I just think I can be a little lazy sometimes. But how do you say you have a lot of energy? Is that just something about you, or do you take, steps to have this energy about you?
A little bit of both. So I definitely have always felt like a lot of vital energy from when I was a kid. I would like sleepovers. I would be the first one awake and last one to sleep, kind of thing, because I was like just excited. And and then going into my adult years in college, it was so much pressure on academics and school that it kind of transmuted the energy into a lot of anxiety and like manic energy, actually. So that was really not a fun time as much. And it was like learning how to ground myself, which brought me to my really dedicated yoga practice for the last almost 10 years. Well, I've been practicing for 10 years and
no kidding.
for 8. Yeah, and so that's been really grounding.
Oh, you teach yoga?
I do. Yes, I teach yoga in the community downtown Ventura, and also with my nature programs. I'm a wilderness mentor.
No kidding. I've been wanting to do yoga.
So
for
it all ties
time.
together. Oh, cool. Yeah,
like,
I'll give you some guest passes.
That would be so awesome. And because my main thing is this happens with weightlifting too. People who want to get into like weightlifting or yoga or something. The big problem, and it's at least my problem, is that I'm worried about form. I don't mind doing it alone in my living room, but I first want to know, am I doing it right? Am I going to hurt myself if I'm doing it this way? So like, that's why I'm really interested in like checking it out, having somebody tell me like, yeah, that's good.
That's so awesome. Yeah, I'll love to give you some guest passes that you and your wife could use. And
that would be so sweet.
And yeah, like we're doing all virtual classes, but it's really easy to follow along. I've been really getting a good like rhythm of it, like how to approach it. I have a lot of regulars that show up, so it's pretty fun. And I really find it beneficial for like preventative stuff, like with like in your realm of like skating and stuff. Like it would be so just nice. It's just nice to have more flexibility and strength overall. And it makes like in all my moments in life when life has been really hard, I've like come back to like practicing yoga and just being in my body, and it gives me that confidence that like I can move forward in life. Like, okay, like I can do this. This is good. I'm okay.
Yeah,
that's why I like it a lot.
Well, I think it's just from what I've heard, it's like preventative. But then I've also heard it's if you have like back trouble or trouble in certain areas, that yoga over time will help a lot. It'll alleviate some of that stress or pressure or whatever it is that's hurting your back. So it's awesome that it's preventative, and then it's also therapeutic too.
Definitely therapeutic. There's so many healing qualities and aspects to it, and it can improve everybody's life, which is so cool.
Yeah, and I heard it's also really good for your brain. I mean, like physiologically,
because it improves your oxygen. Yeah, because it improves the oxygen circulation and exchange. So all the blood flow and brain flow improves too.
Wow, so you're sort of a jack of all. What do they call it? A jack of all trades. You do. I thought you just did compost.
I'm a jack of. It's all the energy. Yeah, it's mostly like compost has been like the main focus the last couple years, but everything in my life has started from like the yoga really, and then led into the environmental science, and then into the compost. And
so you mentioned college. Where did you go, and what were you studying?
Well, I grew up in like Thousand Oaks area, and so once I
yeah, so did I. We both know our mutual buddy Miles.
Yeah. Shout out Miles. Woo. But so I went to Westlake High School, and
so did I. What year did you graduate?
Oh, cool. 07.
Oh, let's see. So I think technically, so are you 31?
I'm I'll be 31 this month.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, I think my technically my year is 2008, but I finished in 2007 because I went to Conejo towards the end. Okay, so we maybe we even know each other. That's funny.
I bet there's some paths crossed somewhere. But yeah, so
I went to Westlake.
Oh, cool! That's awesome. So so after the Westlake, I went to University of Arizona in Tucson, and that was for 4 years. I didn't graduate. I kind of burned out and like dropped out and took a little break for a couple years. But I did 4 years there of like intense science classes, undergrad stuff, and took that with me when I went on my travels and work escapades just around California and stuff. And then I came back to Ventura and was like, I just want to go back to school, I think, and finished at Cal State Channel Islands the past like 2.5 years.
Cool.
So I graduated in 2018 officially, so it took me a long time to finish school, like my undergrad, but I did it. And I was like, yeah, I did it. And it's like a lot of cool experience going to 2 different undergrad schools, and for such a extended amount of time, both of them, because I really got to like learn a lot from the regions and like the local community.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, so that was really cool. Yeah, I like that part the best.
And did you live in a dorm? Were you in Tucson?
In Tucson, I was in a dorm, yes.
For 4 years.
And then I lived in a house for 1 year, and then I lived in a house for the other 3.
Wow. And you're what, like 18, 19 when you did that?
Yeah, 18 to 22, which was definitely like coming of age years for me. Like I felt like I came into my like adulthood for sure. I was like not a kid anymore. I was like, I'm taking care of myself. I was like so proud of it. And
that sounds crazy.
Really yeah, it was super fun.
Because
I love the desert.
My experience, I was at home. I was I lived at home with my family until a couple of years ago, like I was not a late bloomer. Like I went to college and stuff, but I sort of just stayed here, and I really, and I say this lightly, but I envy that experience of, going somewhere else and, sort of having to grow up, in a sense. So that's really cool that you got to do that.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I felt really independent and ready to go for like, since I was like 16, I would say. I was like, I'm ready to do this. So it was just like, I guess just in my cards to do that. And there's definitely moments where I like had, because then after I went to college, my parents divorced and then like they sold the house. So there was parts where I was like, man, what if I never moved away? What if I stayed? Would they, like, there was all these like weird things of like, of wishing I could have that kind of home base again. So
yeah,
that's a whole nother reflection of it. So yeah, it's interesting. I've reflected in my own ways in that sense.
So were you about to say, had I not left, maybe my parents would still be together, or you were saying that, you would have just had a little extra time with that home base?
Yeah, maybe more of the latter. Like I would have just had a little extra time at home, because I don't think my parents like were really in love for a long time. Like I could tell from like middle school that they were like pretty different. And,
yeah, what were some of the signs? Like just things they said that, you didn't really see them smile together?
Yeah, exactly. Those two. And then also I noticed they didn't go on dates. I was like hearing about all my friends like being like, oh yeah, my babysitter like came to watch us. My parents went on a date. And I'm like, my parents don't do that. That's weird. And I was like, wait, maybe it's not that weird. I was like, wait, I don't know. And then I started just noticing more of their dynamic and realizing that didn't seem very happy.
Yeah, I my folks divorced, or they separated when I was like maybe 3 or 4 or something like that, and then I think that technically the divorce was like years later, like the paperwork, but they were separated when I was 3, 4, or 5. I can't remember now. So that experience, I would imagine, is so different from your experience. You were aware, you were cognizant, you were an adult when they split up. Was it how hard was that for you? I assume that was hard.
It was, because it felt like a dream shattering, because even though it's like not the best thing when it's like I don't know, I could tell that there was like a lot of hard times in the family, but then also it felt like, oh well, we'll be together forever or something, and then it was like, oh no, we all go our own ways. And so it was kind of like a dismal feeling mostly, because it was like I grew up with Disney Channel, so it was like, oh, that's not the happy ending, like that's not what happens after. So yeah, it was interesting.
Was there some denial, like, no, this can't be true, that they can work it out, or did you accept it right away?
Oh, I definitely accepted it right away. Yeah,
wow,
definitely.
Other than the divorce, what do you think about your parents? Are they good people? Did they teach you the right things? How do you reflect on your raising? You're up. What do you call it? You're being raised by them.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I just it glipped out for a second because someone just tried to call me, so I missed part of that question.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying, what? So other than like them divorcing, were they good parents to you? Did you pick up the right skills in life? How do you reflect on their raising you?
Oh, they did. Like, they had such a great childhood for us. Me and my sister. I have a younger sister who's 2 years younger, and so we had a great time. We definitely were outside a lot, which was so awesome. And we would just make up our own games. We would like sit on we didn't like skateboard, do tricks or anything, but we would like stand to go down straight lines and stuff, sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And we would get on our butts and like bomb hills, like super hard. Like we were just having so much fun just playing. And then my mom was a teacher for a long time, and my dad is like a lighting designer, theater technique person for a long time.
Wow.
So we had a lot of like creative moments and also learning opportunities in those moments. So it was just like every day was fun, and every day we were learning something new. So Definitely lots of fun. And I remember also like when we would have like really fun barbecues on the weekends. And that was really nice too. Yeah.
That's good to hear. So I'm sorry, go ahead. Are you going to say something?
Oh, no, I wasn't.
Oh, so tell me, so how and why and when did you get into composting?
How, when, and why? So when I got into composting was when I was in Arizona, and I learned that there was a way to compost human shit, and I was like, what are you talking about? And then I was like, my professor was like, no, I'm serious. And we went to go visit this house, like on a field trip, like a local hippie house that has a human composting toilet. And it's like it's human manure. And so it was so fascinating because we were learning about a lot of like agricultural systems in really dry, arid environments like the desert. And so human manure is a great way to bring nitrogen into your soils because all the poop that you're making and generating, it has a lot of the food that you ate and digested. Right. So it was just like fascinating to learn about how this like resource, this like waste could be a resource. And then fast forward a few years, I go traveling and I've been traveling in a lot of places around the world. I'm very thankful and blessed that I was able to do that. And I went to India for yoga training, and they they do.
That's awesome.
It was so fun, and they have a lot of
yoga capital, right?
Definitely, that's like the yoga mecca of the world. Yeah, and they use a lot of their cow dung for fire starter, and also they use it for refertilizing their soils too. And so, like all these little like tips along the way was inspiring me to like figure out a way to recycle my own waste and regenerate the planet so that we could live in better harmony with it. And so then when I came home and finished school at Channel Islands, I was trying to do a summer class, and I was like on my computer a bunch, and like it was like finals week of springtime, and it was like so hectic. My computer was like maxed out, and then it crashed, and I was like,
oh no,
are you kidding me? And like, so I had no way. I mean, I could have a way to like find someone to like borrow their computer to finish up stuff, but I took it as a sign that like I needed to just relax because I was just like doing too much school and I wasn't really balancing out my mental state. So I was like, you know what? I was going to sign up for all these summer classes, like so many. And I was like, you know what? This is a sign that like I shouldn't do that. Like, cause I have to work off my computer the whole summer. And I don't feel like dropping like $2,000 on a computer. I was doing it. Like I can't. So it was like, just released it. And then ended up spending a lot of time in my garden that summer and then learning about the soil. And I remember this one particular day I was like feeling the soil in the box, and it was like super dry and kind of like a scary feeling. Like when you submerge your hands in, you're like, oh my God, is something going to grab me or something?
Yeah.
But I started to like really like massage the bed and like get deep in the soil just with my bare hands. And I like, almost it was as if there was like an energy force sucking me under, kind of like being like, listen to us, like learn, like this is the magic. And so I was like, wow, like I want to like plant some stuff. And so I started planting some things, and then they weren't doing so hot. And then I learned like, about like soil, and you can feed it soil compost, and then like, you can plant other companion flowers and plants that help your other plants grow. And then they all will help each other. And I was like just going down this huge rabbit hole, and then realized that compost is like the connecting force to all of it. Cause I was like buying all these bags of compost, and I was like, well, maybe, it's like all this plastic. And I don't really like the idea of all this plastic out in the world. And so I thought like, how do people do this before Lowe's and before Home Depot, you know, like what did our ancestors do? And they essentially like had pits that they like would just like bury their food in, and then all the microorganisms, they would bury it, and then all the microorganisms would go to town and break down all the food and make the soil. So I was like, I could do this. And so I started at-home compost, and that became my research project later that next year for my final
no kidding.
senior. Yeah, I was like, you know what? I think I could do like my research project on it. There's all the science level to it. I'm interested in it. I have access to it, and it's like scalable. Like I can kind of do it small or do it big scale, whatever you want. Yeah, so that's kind of how, when, and why for you.
Wow, that's like sort of like a snowball, you know. It started small like years ago, and all of a sudden it just comes full circle, and it's like this big, you know, machine that you have running now.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's fun. It's cool to see how the more you give into it, the more it gives back too. That's the beautiful part.
So I'm figuring I know the answer to this, but do you compost, how should I say this, your own waste, your bodily waste?
Oh no, I don't know. I don't know how to do that. Yeah, like I'm sure I could figure out, but I don't have the space or anything for that. But I respect it, and I totally would consider it if I had the space.
So I don't know much about composting, so maybe you can help me out. So I live in an apartment. I don't have a garden. Would composting be useful to me given those facts?
Yes, I think so. Especially if you are connected with a community garden near you, and usually every city has at least one or two. And so there's a whole movement of gardening happening right now during the COVID, which is pretty awesome.
Oh yeah.
And so people are wanting to get more connected with the food they eat and where it comes from and how to grow it. So community gardens they're kind of being revived again. A lot of them have these like phases where they are revived and then abandoned, revived and then abandoned. And so it's kind of this like game of like, if you can catch who is actually running it. But then, so anyways, if you're composting in your apartment, you have a place to take your compost or your food scraps. So you can start the compost at your house if you want to like have the process happening in your own, like on your deck or something, or in your kitchen. Yeah. A lot of people like to use like worm bins or kind of like a fermented style of food waste method.
Yeah. So you're saying that even though I don't have a purpose for it per se, you know, if I don't have a garden or anything like that, it's still useful to somebody. It's worth saving because I can take it somewhere.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah, exactly. So, and that's like the beauty of it is like you have that power. You are creating a more resilient community by choosing to divert your food scraps and putting it back into your local soil, whether it's like taking it out from your trash and putting it in your pots or whatever, or just, contributing it to a local garden or farm.
Yeah, well, it does feel bad too. Like let me explain if cooking dinner, for example, you peel the potato, you peel the carrots or whatever, and then you look at your trash can and you just see all this energy being wasted, all the scraps. There are nutrients in that. And, somebody who doesn't know about composting, it's a sort of maybe a shame to go to all that to go to waste.
Absolutely. That's definitely another reason in my journey of how I started too, is because I was noticing that same observation you had, and the fact that the amount of resources it takes to grow that food, to get it to you, and then for it to like be just thrown away or parts of it thrown away. It's like, it's pretty devastating. And then you can't unthink it once you start to think it. That's the kind of haunting side of it. Yeah.
It's hard. Yeah. It's hard to skirt that under the rug. It's like you're sort of lying to yourself almost, it's like to know something's important and then to not do something about it when you can.
Right. And what's also wild to think is that, it makes like once I started composting at my house, we have four or five of us living together at a time. And so there's a small trash in the kitchen that used to get taken out like once a day. And once we started composting that summer before my graduate or my undergrad thesis, I started implementing like a compost bucket and diverting our kitchen scraps, and we ended up taking our trash bin out once a week. So it's like went from once a day to once a week, like immediately, because we cook a lot. So it's just like pretty incredible to see that change. And then to put it on a bigger scale of the fact that like our landfills are 1/3 usually made up of organic material. It's like,
my God,
it's crazy.
Yeah, that's really scary. I noticed in your bio on Instagram, your Queen of Compost bio, 7,000 odd pounds of waste diverted. Are you weighing your compost bin every day or something, or how are you tracking that?
So I am a scientist. I'm a trained scientist. So I love like numbers and data. And I have a scale that I measure buckets on. So I collect all the food scraps in 5-gallon buckets, and I tear the buckets and then weigh just the amount of food scraps that we've collected on a run or at the farmer's market. We were at the farmer's market before the whole COVID ordeal. And so now we're collecting residentially mostly. And I do that in 5-gallon buckets. And so I weigh them and keep track of it. And then that's how the number, it's still like an estimate. Like it's not perfect. Sometimes I will round up for the Instagram, but I have the numbers on an Excel sheet that are all like to the dot. It's pretty fun.
What's really, it's sort of almost sad though, what you're telling me. You're telling me, whatever, so far the estimate is 7,000 pounds of waste. It's almost sad because we're wasting. How much each person is probably wasting every week, every month, every year, and it's just all combined. It's such a large figure of waste. It's depressing, really.
Yeah, and that's like, it can be daunting. It can be overwhelming, and the average amount of waste that one person accumulates in one day is about a pound.
Wow.
And so that's on average. So not every person is generating that much, but if you're going out to eat a lot and you're like, just, I don't know, there's a whole like method how they got that number. And I can't really explain it in succinctly, but, but yeah, so the average is about a pound a day per person. And so it can be overwhelming. And at the same time, the moment you start to save your food scraps and you start to maybe save your veggie stalks and for a veggies, or for your veggie scraps for a veggie stock, like a soup stock, then you're already closing the loop there, because you're now, instead of throwing those away, you're using them again, versus you're like thinking about your waste differently. Yeah. And also the moment you start to save your scraps to compost, like you are making a difference in that 1 pound a day. So there's that like empowerment still, where you can really feel like you are making a difference every time you choose to put your food in the bin.
Yeah, totally. It's like I think about, I've heard, I don't know if this is true, but I've heard that for like every almond takes, if you have like a bag of almonds, all of them, I think, required at least a gallon of water each or something like that. So it's like,
I've heard of something like that too.
So if you throw away, so the waste we're talking about sometimes, well, you sort of said it, but we're in a way we're wasting water too by throwing these scraps away, because the carrots, the potatoes, they're at least some part water. It took water to grow them, so wasting the thing itself.
Water to grow them, labor to pick them, labor to ship them. It's just like
it's waste all across the board.
Was gone. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a bummer. I mean, how can you're obviously taking steps in the right direction, but how can people start to make a difference? I mean, is it as simple as just being aware of the waste that they create?
Definitely. I think the best way is to have fun, like finding ways to generate less waste. And you can start with your coffee filter grinds and filters, and you can just add them to your garden that's already in your yard, or a potted plant somewhere. You can also use coffee grounds a lot of other ways. Like you can Google up a lot of different fun ways. Like I've used them to help scrub dishes, as long as you don't wash them down the drain.
Yeah.
They'll clog the drain, but they're really great for like an abrasion kind of force. So don't scratch the surface either, which is nice. And they also help to help deodorize your hands from any like kitchen onion smells.
Wow, no kidding. So coffee grounds.
Yeah, that's just funny. So simple. And so that's been really fun to learn little small tips like that, or even with citrus peels. Instead of just like tossing them out, they're actually like a huge resource, especially if you buy like the farmer's market or more organic kind, because there's not as many pesticides on them or herbicides. There's you can save the rinds and the peels and make all kinds of tea and medicine and desserts with them. And so there's like, and cleaning products for that matter. So it's just like all these ways that, like the more you become aware, it's like a rabbit hole. And so instead of being like scared and overwhelmed and like coming up with a plan, I recommend to people who are ready to start their food waste journey is just to have fun, like see where you're kind of drawn to and start there. Yeah. Because it's all scalable and it's gonna change every day with how you look at it. So
yeah, that's a good point. It's important to have fun, and I think you sort of alluded to this. It sounds to not be scared by how big the problem is, and maybe a little fear is okay, but you're saying once you start, it just you just learn more and more. You do more and more as it goes on. So the important part is to be aware and to just start and have some fun.
Yeah, exactly. Have the courage to start, and it's not always easy to take that first step. But then the other reminder that I want to share is that we need those failures in order to succeed. So one step in the direction, even if you take 2 steps back, is still a step forward. Right. So that's just like really, really, part of it too is like the first few times composting, you might not figure out the balance quite, but then after a couple visits to your compost and checking it out and assessing it and doing some research, you'll be an expert. You'll know exactly what your compost is doing, and you'll learn its language, and it's just really fabulous. I love it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get a little bit now. Start keeping my peels and stuff. So you were saying something interesting about how you or something like digging in the soil and just around, sort of made it sound like it was sort of this connection to the earth you had. So in that vein, what sort of things have you learned, or so what sort of things have you learned from even just plant flowers and your own food, if you do that, or gardening? You mentioned that you're interested. What kind of things have you learned from that?
That's a great question. I have a lot of life lessons that I've learned from the garden and from composting in particular. One is that things never die. So back to that whole energy is just recreated concept. That really helped me because my grandma passed away last year, and that was in the middle of all my project kind of I had already graduated school, but I was just starting to be in the community more. And so I was excited, and she was just an excited person, and I was just excited to share that stuff with her. Yeah. But then so when she transitioned to the other side, I just felt oh, is she lost? Because she feels so close still. In every flower, it's we had little seeds at her funeral, and I planted some, and they're still growing. So it's so nice to feel her presence through just these flowers that are blooming. It's been really nice to learn that the cycle of life is just keep going, and the death comes back into life again, because even I was mourning and grieving my grandma's loss, and she had seeds that we offered at her funeral. And so I planted some.
Wow.
And they're still in my garden, blooming, and to
no
this day.
way.
So it's been, and so those kind of reminders of life regenerates, and even though life kind of breaks off and dies off, it's still a new form will come back of it, and that energy still lives with you. So those are big the big lessons that I get, but they're still there. That's what I'm connecting with every day when I step outside into my garden, is that kind of that therapy, that nurturing of life, that we're okay. And also
that's so
we're all
cosmic
in the sense that cosmic composting. Yeah, definitely. It's like definitely cosmic connection feels like. And what else have I learned? I've learned that the more you give, the more you get. So the more time and love you put into the garden, the more gifts you'll get back. And that's just like, that's how it works no matter what. And so that's like a really beautiful lesson because it transitions and translates into other parts of my life where if I want to give a project a certain amount of energy, it will give back a lot to me, whether it's like maybe not the results I was hoping or wanted, but it gave back so many lessons and moments that I wouldn't have had otherwise. And and then also the fact that gardening makes you happy. Like it makes the world happy. It makes the worms happy. It makes the birds happy because they eat the worms and the seeds. It makes all these creatures happy. And then people walk by and they're happy. You can clip stuff and you're happy that you can like eat it in your kitchen and you can also give it to your friends too. So it makes you happy.
So you said at your grandmother's funeral that you had seeds and you handed out seeds and you planted some in your garden. And you said, it was just my uncle's idea to like have seeds there for everyone to take as a like memory.
That's really beautiful. I've never heard of that. That's really beautiful.
Yeah.
And so you said that the seeds you planted, the flowers or the plants are still alive today.
Yeah. So I chose some forget-me-nots because I did not want to forget her. And I thought that was a very suitable name. And they're pretty, like the picture showed like a pretty small little blue flower, like a violet blue flower, kind of the size of like your pinky nail or so. Mm-hmm. And I thought that'd be like a sweet little color splash in the garden. So I have some that are now like in their season. So they're coming up again, which is nice.
And they're perennial?
Yes. So, or I think they're annuals. They come back, but they reseed. So once they reseed, they...
Or actually, what's the distinction, actually? For some reason, I thought perennial meant like they just come back every year. What's the difference between annual and perennial?
Annuals only bloom once a year, and then they die. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And perennials will come back every year from the same root system.
And with those plants, do you get the feeling that you're there with your grandmother somehow? Or they just remind you of her?
In my garden. They just remind me of her, really. Yeah. I can feel like I can kind of draw into my grandma's presence whenever I really want to. And I could be anywhere. The garden is nice because it slows me down. So I'm not moving as fast. So that's why it's a good reminder to see those because I can tap into
my
memories too.
My grandfather passed away a couple years ago. So I can relate on some level to your loss. And I relate to what you just said too. You said that you can kind of, you can conjure her memory wherever you are. And sometimes I just look in the mirror and I see like features of my grandfather, because obviously I have some of his genetics, and I'm reminded of him sometimes when I just look at myself,
Yeah, that's a trip. Wow.
Yeah, so I can relate. I wouldn't ask those sensitive questions unless I could relate. Cool. One thing I wonder, have you always had patience, or do you learn patience from gardening? Because I feel like
that's a good one.
Like, I feel like you have to be patient, or you learn patience through it. What do you think?
Both. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I have a lot of patience, but I only have so much patience. And so the gardening is still always a lesson in patience. And what's nice, you have to be patient when you sow seeds because it takes time for them to sprout. And you have to be patient for your plants to grow you food because they don't just grow overnight. So there's a lot of patience that you're always like talking to. You're like, hey, patience, it's a good friend again.
Well, it makes me think I would imagine that being a gardener, there's some elements of delayed gratification involved. Some people wake up and they say, oh, I want to plant a flower today, or I want to plant a tomato plant, and they go get the seeds.
they, drop it in the dirt and do all the work. And it's like, okay, well, there's looking at their clock now, waiting for a tomato to sprout. So it's sort of it's an activity where there's built in there's some delayed gratification. And I wonder if that is hard for people.
I wonder too. I work with kids a lot, and for them, it can be kind of challenging for them to like plant something and then say like, "Okay, like where is it?"
Yeah.
And but I like that term, delayed gratification, because in a way, it's like you're indebting it to yourself. Like you're like planting a seed that you'll be grateful for later. So I like how that sounds.
Yeah, that's true. That it's planting a seed in your mind too. It's you're working towards something. You're having to be patient, and it's sort of a lesson in life, really. I mean, it's a way to look at just the way you live. It's not always just the physical activity that you're trying to get results from, but just a way of life.
Yeah, definitely. And the slowing down of it is really a nice reminder to live your life, because it's so fast paced. And so it's nice to just like go at the pace of the earth for a little bit.
Yeah.
And the seasons.
So let's see. Let me ask you a few more questions.
Sure.
You told me a few of
These
your
are
interests.
Great questions, by the way.
Thank you. I wouldn't. I had that's. We hadn't met before, so I had to get just a little bit of info on you when we talked. Last night or something. I remember you had said that you like language, and I like language too. And I remember I was taking I can't remember what the course was. It was language for sure at Channel Islands, but I can't remember what it was called. But like the first day, the professor had said, and I'll pose this question to you. He had asked us, he pointed over at the window and he said, "How many ways can you ask me or get me to open the window?" So I would pose the question to you, not how many ways, but can you just tell me a few ways you could ask me to open the window with language?
Yes, I could. Should I ask them?
Yeah, go for it.
Can you open the window?
Okay, good.
Can you open the window? I need you to open the window right now. Simon says, walk over, take your hands, and lift the window pane so we get fresh air.
I like it. Well, I mean, it's endless. Like,
yeah, I know, it's so fun. That's a good one to think about.
So, what makes it fun to you?
I think it's the fact that you can switch words around, and then it can totally paint a different picture. I think the picture of it is what I love. Is that the words somehow, when you hear the sound of a word, it translates to an image in your brain that tells you a story. That's why I like it.
Yeah. What I like about it too is there's also, you gave a few examples of ways to ask somebody to open a window. And depending on how you ask it or phrase it, it also can surface emotion too. For instance, one of the examples in that, when he had asked us, when somebody had said, like they imagine their grandmother asking them to open the window, and they imagine the grandmother not being particularly nice. And she would say something like, "Oh, well, a thoughtful person would have opened the window by now."
Yeah, so, like something passive aggressive. Yeah.
Yeah, like super passive aggressive. So it's like, so there's sometimes language, it's not always the action that's important. It's like, well, it's not always about you wanting the window open, but about you wanting to hurt somebody's feelings by asking them to open the window. You know what I mean? So I was fascinated by that.
It. Yeah,
there's some underbelly to it.
Yeah, it's fascinating how the context behind the words too. Yeah, they totally change. The energy changes.
Yeah, I think partly I like language too. We were talking about that the other night. that's partially why I like your Instagram name, Queen of Compost, and then your name's Camila or Camila.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of what do they call it? Alliteration. Camila, Queen, Compost, like a lot of K sounds, and I think there's something satisfying about that.
I think so too. That's actually partly influenced why I chose the name. Yeah.
Yeah, and the word queen, what does that word represent to you? Like, when you say Queen of Compost, what does the word? I mean, just shoot on what that word queen makes you think of in the context that you use it.
This is such a good question. I was actually talking about this with a good friend named Skip, and he's
great name.
Yeah, he's this like old timer garden rock head guy that just
is he older?
Yeah, he's like old, like white hair guy. Like,
I mean, you got to be an old guy if your name's Skip.
And he's like, but he's super able. Like, he's moving huge rocks around the Ojai demonstration garden every day, and it's just like incredible, his vision for the planet. So anyways, he's very good with words and loves language too. And so we were talking one day, and he doesn't like that I'm called the Queen of Compost. And so we were discussing this topic. And so I wanted to share with you is that he was kind of implying that like queen refers to like authoritative and monarchy and just like hierarchical slave kind of, just like really abuse of power kind of connotation.
Yeah.
And my argument for him was, well, this is 2020 and we're making new language all the time. We never had BRB, LOL, like all these little random like totes, like all these short words that now are like actually like what we use.
Yeah.
And so we can change the meaning of words. And I lived with someone who's now trans and has transitioned to male. So, but when I knew him before, it was as a female, he was giving me all these lessons of how language refers to pronouns and like she, he pronouns, and how I was like, it's because I was reflecting to him. I was like, it's just hard for me to look at you and say he or something. I was just like, just be honest with him and be like, I don't like it's, or they, like, how do I say they when it's one singular person? And he was so patient with me and just mentioned like, well, why can't we change the language for like LOL BRB when we can do it this way too? And so ever since then, I was like thinking, this is powerful. So with the whole monarchy connotation to queen and like the abuse of power, I have more of a feeling behind it where my intention to be the Queen of Compost is to share knowledge and empower the whole community with compost and connecting people to each other through composting, a network where we can become more resilient as a community. And so that's my definition for the Queen of Compost is that it's empowering the community. I don't want to like take it all for myself. I want everyone to rise with me as I learn more and as I help educate more, and people will share the knowledge too with people that they know. So that's my intention behind the word.
Yeah, I think you hit that on the head exactly with how you said that language evolves and it changes, and we add words to the lexicon, we change words, and I agree. Like the Queen, we like recent history, social media, we are using the word king and queen mostly like in a funny way, like I don't know, it basically a stud. That's, we say king now instead of stud.
Yeah, totally.
But queen, that's sort of not. It's sort of having. I think we're divorcing the authority aspect. In recent vintage, we. I think it really just stands for like female empowerment, valuing females, and it's a word. I think it's just a. What's the word? How can I say it? It's basically a nice word for a woman now, a powerful woman.
I think so too. And that's how I view it. And especially Beyonce kind of helped bring that queen connotation back to life too. And Madonna, like all those really big pop stars. Yeah. But yeah, like I feel that it really has hit the whole world in a really positive note where it's like every woman can be a queen. It doesn't have to be one queen of the whole kingdom. It's like you are a queen of your own queendom, and that's where I feel with the compost queening.
Yeah, well, I think that's I love that name. I think it's a great choice. I love the alliteration.
Thank you.
I think there's a lot that I want to talk to you about, but I think we should just do it again sometime.
Yeah, that sounds great to me. This has been a great intro talk, and I'm glad to meet you over the phone.
Yeah, it's right. I hate talking on the phone, so this is great. Cool. So Camila, it was nice to meet you, and I just have one more question for you.
Yes.
Who the hell are you?
I'm a queen of compost.